Hi everyone! Today I wanted to take a look at a brand that I really like and how this brand became more than just a cookie. We're talking about Oreo, of course. So I really want to do this series where we analyze some type of brand that really inspires me in some way. And we will be analyzing these brands using my brand model. You can see right here. Go over each pillar so it's easy to see what the thinking behind it was. So let's just recap real quickly how this model works. So first you have the strategy part that's really thinking about what will we become and how will we become that. Then we think about messaging. What will we say and how will we say it? This is really the personality of the brand and how it will communicate. Then of course we need to talk about the visual identity. What will it look like? How will it feel? Typography, color, and so on. So how will we translate this strategic part and this personality into something that's visually interesting? And then last but not least, we'll talk about the brand behavior. I've mentioned this in previous videos that brand behavior is actually something really important because it matters not only what we say but also how we will be in the real world. And that is something that is shifting, and brands that are thinking a lot more about how they will act in the real world are winning these days. And then if we combine all those things, that's actually what makes the brand different. So a lot of times people think positioning is really something that happens in the strategy, and that is true. We think about how we can differentiate the brand in the strategy. But we also need to think about how will the experience be, how will they talk to me, and all those things combined is what really makes you different. This is really what separates you from the competition. So let's take a look at the Oreo case and start with the strategic part. So Oreo, in 2012, Oreo had reached its 100-year anniversary. It was at the top of its market and all things were good. So why did they need change? Because Oreo wanted to become something more than a cookie, they wanted to become an icon. Here we can see some of the old Oreo ads. It's really nice and interesting to see. And they even called it cream sandwich back then, so it's really funny. So as we can see here, if we would place Oreo, they would be a power player. They were at the top of their market and they had the biggest share. But the question is, once you become this power player, is what comes after that? That's something a lot of brands struggle with, such as Coca-Cola, Apple, Nike. What to do once you are the market leader? That's really a tough question. And Oreo had the same problem. They knew they needed to be an icon. A bit like Nike is more than just a shoe. It's really a brand, it's an emotion. Here's Chris Do explaining how a brand is something more than just the product it's selling. Nike could open a hotel and you'd know what to expect, while if Hiat made a shoe, you'd have no idea what to expect. And one of those two has a brand. So at first, Oreo advertising was all about the kids and the emotion around that. So here's another cookie ad. So Oreo was really all about childhood, milk, parents, innocence. Here's one of the heads of marketing working at Oreo in the time, talking about how they were so constrained by this idea around kids that it actually became more of a limitation than something else. So they couldn't show anything that didn't happen in the kitchen. So really what was first their power later on became somewhat of a burden for them. So that's always important to think about when you're doing brand strategies, to make sure that you create ideas that are broad enough so you don't have to limit the brand to it. So Oreo really needed a change. They wanted to go from childhood to something more. And then that's what the big idea came from, wonder. That's also something that's really relevant to childhood, but it goes beyond that. So that's a really good starting point. The big idea was really, I wonder if I gave an Oreo too. And then this became a platform because they could imagine all kinds of stuff, and that's really what kids like to do. They dream about possibilities, but it's something adults can relate to as well because they try to imagine as much as well where they're going. So this whole idea was really interesting because it gave a playful platform for creatives to do their thing. So now we kind of know what Oreo wanted to become. They wanted to become something more than just a cookie brand. They wanted to become an icon. And the central emotion around that was the whole idea of wonder, this idea of playful wonderness. So let's take a look at the messaging now. Besides the wonder-filled campaign, Oreo had created this terminology or this vocabulary around their brand and their cookies. The whole slam, lick, and dunk terminology is something that's really interesting because they use it even to create a video game and a mobile app. They use it in their tweets, they use it everywhere, and it's something that's really a part of the Oreo brand, and it's really nice because these words identify them, but people start using them beyond just the brand and they become part of culture. So here is a really interesting tweet Oreo did during the blackout of the Super Bowl. So the power was out and they tweeted like, okay, you can still dunk in the dark. This got really viral and really set them on the map as something else, as something more. Another really interesting thing, if we look at the messaging, is the tagline, Milk's favorite cookie. This is like a really nice wordplay where they actually inverse the whole idea of the brand and they link it to a certain type of product. So Oreo's tone of voice is friendly, humoristic, and supportive. So of course, we've already seen some examples of what this actually looks like, but let's take a deeper dive into the visual identity of Oreo.
Wonder if I gave an Oreo to somebody out there who I didn't know. Would they laugh after I'd gone, or would they pass that wonder on? I wonder how it changed your point of view if I gave one to you.
So as we saw in this beautiful animation style video of Wonderfilled, this whole aesthetic is really interesting. It's not like the perfect CG movie, but it's a really playful kind of vibe around it, and the whole how the typography is not perfect and not super clean. It fits the Oreo brand really nicely. So even the logo type supports the idea of Milk's favorite cookie, and of course we can see the white type that actually kind of represents the actual filling of the Oreo, but also of course the milk association is really important. And then we have the really strong blue color and saturation, which really makes it pop. Then, of course, they use a lot of other colors and illustrations to bring this brand to life. That's what's really intriguing about Oreo is they don't have one style. They use CG, illustration, typography, all these things, but they still feel Oreo-ish. So this is a typical kind of style they are using on their social media platforms and so on, where we can see the blue color, even some of the greens, but still in the same kind of hues. And then the typography that's a bit wobbly and a bit imperfect. And that's really what makes it. And then of course we have the cookie also as a visual element that's really strong. So let's talk about the actual cookie. This design is also another layer of complexity and something that really intrigues me in the Oreo brand. Like this cookie almost looks like something mythical because of the whole pattern that goes around it, and there's a lot of things that people are writing on blogs. There's even some conspiracy theories on what this actually means, but it adds another layer of kind of mystery around this brand, which is really cool. So Oreo's visual aesthetic is ownable, it's recognizable, and yet broad enough to keep surprising us, and that's what makes it a really strong identity. So last but not least, we need to take a look at the brand behavior, because of course we can say whatever we want, or Oreo can say whatever they want about their cookie and how they're all about wonder, but they also need to create some wonder in the world to make this happen. So the brand behavior is really important. I wanted to show this campaign because I really like the idea. When we saw the cookie earlier on, I was saying that it was a bit mythical, and that idea of this mythical, it almost looks like a vault of something. So they use this idea. This is an installation somewhere in New York, I think, where you could actually open that vault and take a look inside. And that's where the actual wonder was happening behind the cookie. And this is a really fun thing to do because maybe it's an experience for only 10 or 100 people, but once you start making content out of it, of course, the whole world can relive this experience. Here's another funny, quirky thing where Oreo did a flash mob and the cookie was dressed as a mascot, which is really funny, of course. And it all adds to the brand that's actually surprisingly modern and like youthful, while actually this is 100-year-old cookie. So that's what really intrigues me, how they turned around this whole idea. Of course, as we've seen in the messaging part, their actual behavior on social media, how they talk and also how they respond to things is really fascinating. They are really good at like tweeting or creating pieces of content that just happen really quickly. And also how they respond to other people is really nice. They keep on bringing this friendly, supportive vibe. Another cool thing to see in their brand behavior is their actual collaborations and associations with other brands. A bit like Nike supports their athletes, Oreo is always looking for interesting collaborations that expand on their ID and maybe gives them some new customers, of course. So as we can see here, they did some churros with Disney, which is of course a great association because Disney is also about wonder. Of course, they had to do something together with McDonald's. So this campaign, Daily Twist, was really cool, where they created a piece of content for 100 days. Okay, so let's take a look at what combines all this. So what makes Oreo different? So I think what really stands out when we look at Oreo is they don't only say they stand for wonder, they try to create as much delight and wonder themselves each day by being out there, by creating content, by talking to people, by actually creating fun experiences in the physical world. That is what makes them more than just a cookie brand. So what are the key takeaways when we look at this brand? What can we as designers or strategists take away from this brand? So the first thing that really important is look for an emotion. Something that really connects with the audience, because it's easy to think about features and functionality, but you need to start thinking about what is something that really makes this brand strong on an emotional level. Of course, Oreo already had this connotation because of their long history, but there's always something strong. Sometimes it's more of like an emotion that you have around the category or the sector or something else, but there's always something interesting that really can connect with the audience. So create a brand ID that is open enough to last another 100 years. This is what's really good about the Oreo case, is it's really a strong ID and it can last long enough because it didn't limit the creativity. It wasn't like the first round they had where they actually started to get frustrated about that all the advertising and visuals was around the kitchen and the kids, and that was a bit of a limiting stuff, but now they could just jump off the board and go crazy. Another really important thing to see here is how much time and effort has to be put in it. You don't just become an iconic brand, it's years and years of work. You need to be out there every day, creating content, engaging with people, investing in design and marketing to make this happen. So not only does it take time, effort, money, but it also takes a lot of guts to shift. I've noticed this in my personal working life. When I'm working with clients, you have to really make sure that these clients also are aware of the consequences of this shift in the branding and how much this will actually cost. Something that I really admire about Oreo as well is they were at the top of the market when they decided to rebrand. Now a lot of people would actually say like, why would you do that? You're making money, that's okay, so why would you go beyond? And they saw an opportunity to become something more, and that's what I really respect. And I think this kind of mentality where you think like, okay, we're here, but we can go to this level, that's something that's really inspiring and that we should all try and look at. And not only did they actually go beyond, not only was this an inspiring thought, they also proved an interesting business case. This campaign helped drive 30% of the total cookie category growth. So this actually proved the whole sector that this wasn't the end, or this wasn't the ceiling to the whole cookie market. So that was it for this Oreo case. I hope you like this kind of thing, so please let me know in the comments if you think this is interesting and what kind of brands you want me to analyze, so we can do another one of these. See you around.